Hi, everyone. We're going to get started here in about 10 minutes. Could you do me a favor and in the chat box that's down in the bottom right-hand corner, just let me know that you can hear me and see the screen. That'd be really helpful. Thank you. Great. All right. Thank you. I'm going to hide my video for a few more minutes and mute myself, and I'll check back in about 5 minutes. We're 5 to 7 minutes away from getting started here, and I want to allow enough time for everyone who has registered to show up. So we'll be in touch shortly. All right, everybody, how are you? Let's get going. I don't know if you can see a video here. We'll make it a little bigger for you, hopefully. All right, well, thanks for joining, and I appreciate your patience while we waited for people to show up today. A few housekeeping items. If you have a question during the webinar, you can click Ask a Question. It should be down below on the screen here. You can also upvote questions from other viewers, and we'll answer all of the questions, as many as we can get to, we have time for in the Q&A portion of the webinar today. Also, the recording and replay of the webinar should be available within a couple of minutes of the webinar finishing. So if you need to leave early or step away for a few minutes, you will get the recording. We'll also email it out to everybody who has attended today. So you will get notification of that. And will also be posted up on thegood.com and our website. So you'll have plenty of ways to view it moving forward. Okay, can I just get a quick thumbs up in the chat if you guys can hear me before I get moving again, and make sure we're good to go. Good to go. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to turn off my video here as we get going so you can focus on the screen. And great. So to quickly introduce myself there, I'm John MacDonald, CEO of The Good. We help e-commerce companies increase sales through conversion rate optimization. Now, our services, what they do is convert more of your company's existing website traffic into buyers. So I mentioned we do this through conversion optimization. That includes things like A/B testing and utilizing every click and movement that consumers are taking on your site to improve the consumer experience and usability of your site and help increase your conversion rates. We've worked with brands like Nike, Xerox, and Adobe, and lots more. This is just a few of the logos here. But today we're going to talk a bit more about what this conversion rate optimization is very quickly. And then we're going to jump right into doing some teardowns of product detail pages, which is why we're all here today. So quick agenda after the introduction. We're going to cover some of the basics of optimizing product detail pages. I just want to establish a common language. That's really all this is about. It's going to be very quick. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what those data types are and what is involved in CRO. Then we'll jump right into those product detail page teardowns and open it up for questions at the end. Again, don't hesitate to ask them at any time by using that Ask a Question feature or including them in chat along the way. All right, ready? Let's dive right in here. So what is conversion optimization, and how do we at The Good define it? Again, it's all about establishing a common language here. So this is how we define conversion optimization at The Good. A data-backed system for increasing the percentage of website visitors that convert into customers, or more generally, take any desired action on a web page. All right, let's break this down. A data-backed system. So CRO is not about trying random tactics until one works. It's really all about using data, again, all the clicks and movements from your site's visitors, to decide where is best to optimize on your site. A system. Now, any seasoned conversion strategist knows that successful optimization is found in not just one tactic, but a compounding effect and continued optimization applied to a structured and well-planned manner. So a system is extremely important. It's not just randomly trying tactics throughout your site. Increasing the percentage of website visitors that convert into customers. So while conversion optimization is technically about improving conversion rates, we also believe that it's about maintaining margins and that's just as important. Or to put more simply, it's not about focusing on discounting or any of those other margin drain areas. It's really about increasing the percentage of visitors that convert into customers through, through tactics that are all data backed, and understanding how you're going to improve the experience for that consumer. So again, take any desired action on a web page is really about knowing that a purchase is just not the only conversion point that matters. On the contrary, helping your visitor to go further down that purchase funnel can be just as valuable, right? So you can also focus on other key metrics like email signups, or increasing the path to purchase and pushing people further down that funnel, or even making your navigation easier to use. So all of these things together is what really focuses on conversion optimization. So really quickly, I want to talk about 4 key types of data that go into conversion optimization. And these are really groups. There's lots of areas that can dive a little deeper into each of these, but the first is analytics. So this includes, of course, things like site usage analytics, and this is mostly what people would look at for Google Analytics, the biggest provider to quote. But other things you could be looking at here are metrics on top sellers, revenue numbers, seasonality for your business, and lots of other types of analytics data. So Google Analytics is great out of the box for marketing information. It's really not that helpful right out of the box for helping you improve conversions. But there's a lot of things that you can gather from there, and a lot of dashboards that you can set up within Google Analytics with a little bit of extra effort there that will help you to utilize that information a lot more effectively. Next, we also look at heat maps. Now, we're going to look at some heat maps later today here as part of the teardowns, but this also includes things like scroll maps. How far down are people scrolling on your site? Click maps. Where are they clicking and engaging? And other movement maps. We're going to look at eye tracking in a little bit here. But there's also movement maps around where does your cursor go on the page? Where do people tap on mobile devices? There's a lot of information that we can gather from heat mapping there. We also use user testing, which allows us to observe real individuals using your website and talking out loud about their experience while we're recording their screen and their audio. That gives us hours upon hours of data to utilize and helping understand not only what people are doing from the analytics, but also what the visitors are thinking. So it's a great combination of both qualitative and quantitative data, and this is a big piece of that. So we have access to thousands of trained testing subjects, and these people are all trained to speak out loud about what they're thinking as they go through tasks that we give them to do on the site. So it's a very important piece of information for helping to understand what people are thinking as they go. Finally, we use A/B testing and multivariate testing to statistically test which changes to a site produce better results. So thinking about A/B testing, you can test anything, really. Common examples you'll see on the internet, which are not very effective, but a common example is altering call to action copy or button colors, things of that sort. The most effective tests have a long-term plan in mind, which goes back to that definition breakdown and talking about a system, having a system in place. So, what we do here is we know that data tells us what is happening. We use all of these sources together to help us understand why it's happening, why people are taking the actions, or why they're dropping off in the funnel, and why the leaks are in your bucket of conversions. We look for patterns that help develop insights in visitor behavior. Then we use all of this data to inform hypotheses around why particular behaviors are occurring and how we can impact those in a way that we want, in a meaningful way for our e-commerce business. And finally, it helps us to design experiments and tests that give us better insight into customer behavior. So all of this together makes up the optimization process and system. And it's an iterative process of small incremental changes that add up to create a more engaging site tailored for your customers' behaviors. In the end, what you want is a website that fits your audience specifically. A website that's tailored like this really leads to a less burdensome and a more enjoyable site for your audience to use. So with all of this in mind, let's look at how you can use just one data point, right? So all of these together are extremely valuable and very impactful. But even having one piece of data when used correctly can really help you to start optimize your site. So I can't stress the importance enough of using data on the clicks and movements of your site's visitors for optimizing your site. The big mistake is a lot of people want to focus on what their competitors are doing or what they think should be done to the site. Look, we do this, we've been doing this for 9 years, we do this every day, and we're always surprised by what we find in the data. And really, the skill around conversion optimization is how to mine that information from data. So it's really important that you use data to help optimize your site. So let's take a look at this. We're going to look at eye tracking specifically today. So this is what we're all here for today. So we're going to dive right in. Thanks for helping me bear with me while we set some of the common language there. First of all, before we jump in, I just wanted to thank everybody who submitted their site to be part of the webinar today. We had an overwhelming response, which is great. And we're going to get through as many of these as we can today. If we don't get to your site, please get in touch. I'd be happy to walk you through one specifically for your site. My contact info is going to be at the end of the webinar today on the last slide. So I'll make sure to leave that up for a little bit so you can reach out, and if you submitted and we didn't get to you, let me know and we'll find a time to walk you through. Okay, ready? Let's do this. So first up is hope bars. What we're going to do for each of these product detail pages today is look at one data point to use as a basis for the teardowns, as I mentioned. That data point is eye tracking heat mapping. So what this is we're going to look at heat maps of where people looked on the pages. So we'll jump in and do that. Also, I want to be clear that all of these recommendations today are things that I would really suggest running an A/B test on. So think of these as suggestions that are suggestions for tests that should be run on this product detail page. Now, we've been doing this for 9 years, so we always have some great thoughts about what should be done to these pages. But of course, like I mentioned earlier, we're always surprised. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Keep in mind that all of these are suggestions for tests that should be run. All right, so here's Hope Bar's product detail page. It looks to be for their maple cinnamon flavor bars. What else do we notice here? Let's take a moment and review it briefly. Hopefully you all can see this pretty clearly. But what stands out even at this view for you? Give us a second to take a look at that. Okay, now here's the eye tracking heat map for this page. Now, if you're not familiar with heat mapping, that's okay. All you really need to know is that it goes from hot to cold, right? So red is where the eye spent most time looking at this page. Then it cools off from there. So from red to yellow to green to blue. And gray, that is where no one looked at all. So out of all the viewers that were part of this tracking, they didn't look there at all. So without me calling anything out right away, what do we see? Well, we're going to start at the top of the page and work our way all the way down to the footer for each of these. So first thing that we notice is that the free shipping offer is missed entirely. You can see that nobody looked at this. So in the gray bar at the top, it says free shipping with all orders over $50. Well, this is likely because of the gray color of the bar. It just doesn't stand out on the page. The eye is clearly drawn down to the product photo. You can see right around that Hope Bar photo, that's bright red, which isn't always a bad thing for a product detail page. You want people to engage with the photos. But what's interesting is the free shipping with orders over $50 isn't called out anywhere else on this page. So if it's missed here, it's missed completely. Next, we can see the same thing here at the main site navigation, right? It blends into the page so well that it just gets overlooked by visitors. Now, we do want visitors to focus on the product detail page content because that's why they're on this page, but we also want them to be able to find additional information out about Hope Bars and at least know that there are other options where they can get their questions answered along that path to purchase and making a decision that's best for them. So for instance, if we use this as just a landing page, meaning a page where we are sending traffic directly to this URL, maybe via AdWords or Facebook ads, something like that, the visitor may wish to see what else Hope Bars has to offer. So I think that this nav needs to be called out a bit better. I would test some different design elements that might help it stand out a little more. Let's take a look at the product photos on this page. I mentioned them a second ago, but the challenge here is that there just really isn't much consistency. Well, there's great engagement on that main photo. Two of the photos below just almost get missed entirely. And I'd like to know why this is. Likely it's because the sizes are larger on those with more engagement. And the photo on the far right is vastly different from the others in that it draws the eye into the detail there. So, to start, I'd recommend testing that all photos be the same size. I'd also recommend highlighting which photo is actually being shown right now. I believe it's the one on the far left, but there's no way to indicate to the user what they're looking at. Next up is the product name and those initial details. We can see a strong focus on the price. Right? It's bright red where it says $36 there. This indicates to me that the visitor is very interested in what they will get for that price. But nowhere in these details does it tell you how many bars you'd receive for that price. So if you can't read it, it says one-time purchase for $36, or they have the option to subscribe and save 15%. And then it says deliver every 1 month, and then a text link that says see details. So the visitor has now read through all this content like we just did, right? And the very last line, all the way at the bottom below add to cart, and then in that paragraph of text, it says 10 bars per case. And even that is green-blue, which means that quite a few people are missing that information. I bet if we did user testing on this page, remember we just talked about user testing and sending people to the site who talk about their experience that they're having, I bet that they'd be asking the question out loud, and we'd catch people having this experience that say, well, what am I getting for $36? It's a one-time purchase, but how many am I getting? Additionally, if we look at this, the visitor is being asked to make a decision about a one-time purchase or a monthly subscription. But again, without knowing what they're getting, it makes it really difficult for people to decide if they want to subscribe or not. So if we look a little deeper at this, the way it's presented is it's asking the visitor to do a ton of work. We call this cognitive load, and we actually wrote an article about this up on our site, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, I think. But let's think about that decision process here if you're the consumer. First step is you're thinking to yourself, do I want a one-time purchase or a subscription? It says deliver every 1 month. Does that mean I can alter it to deliver every 3 months instead? I wonder what see details will lead me to if I click it. By the way, if you click that link, it actually takes you to a generic subscriptions powered by recharge page, which quite honestly is not helpful, and it takes the consumer away from this site. So we're asking them to see details and leading them into some place that the consumer thinks that they're going to get the answers that they're seeking, when instead it just injects more questions about who is recharge and what's going on there. Next is the quantity. That comes up and it's like, well, what does this mean to me? Am I going to get 1 bar every 1 month? I mean, likely not for $36, right? But how many bars will I receive? So all of this is going through. I mean, I just pointed out 4 or 5 questions very quickly. And that process is a bit much to ask of the visitor at this stage. So always be thinking about what the visitor has to go through to purchase. It's very clear, I bet, to Hope Bars what all these things mean because they're in it. I like to say that it's, I heard this once and I repeat it quite often. It's not my saying, but it's very hard to read the label from inside the jar. So as a brand who works on your website and sees your website every day, it becomes very hard for you to understand what a new visitor is going through. And that's why collecting all this data on your actual visitors is what's important. And so you know, at this point, again, you've asked the visitor to go through all these steps and they haven't even gotten to the product description copy yet. So they still have really little understanding of what they're going to get and what they're expecting. So let's take a look at that description next. So this is what I like to call a wall of text. Our research clearly shows that visitors will only scan your product description copy. So it needs to be broken out into clear and concise and scannable points. You can see here that people's eyes start to trail off towards the right side of that content block. So it's red on the left and then starts to go, you know, kind of yellow-green to the right. This typically indicates to us that they start reading each line and trail off before finishing. So they're scanning this copy, right? They're quickly scanning from left to right and then jumping back. So I would really suggest breaking this out into individual sentences or bullet points and something short, digestible points. Now, then all the way after all that text, we get down to the weight and the quantity. But that ends up getting kind of hidden because the eye is lumping those two really important lines under the larger block of text when scanning. So you can see they're kind of getting missed, as I called that earlier. At the very bottom of that blue box I've highlighted, in the bottom left corner, it says 10 bars per case. And it's green-blue, which means that not many people are looking at it. Next, there are these colorful social share icons directly below that description, and they're drawing the eye further down the page. Now, this is likely causing some bit of a distraction, and quite honestly, at the good, we're just not seeing the engagement with these buttons on product detail pages that we used to a handful of years ago. Visitors now all know how to post a link to their social profiles, and they don't really trust these buttons like they used to. So now what they do is they copy the URL out of the browser and paste it into whatever they want to share it on. So they don't really engage and use these buttons. I bet if we did some click tracking on these buttons, we'd see that they're very likely used minimally or not at all. Now, with these two things in mind, I really recommend just removing them from the page. That will help people get further down into the meat of what they want. And if you break up that product description copy, you are going to be increasing the height of the page as well. So getting rid of unnecessary content is going to be helpful. As we scroll down the page a little more, we're showing customer reviews. Now, these fall under what I like to call social proof. And they're great to include on a product detail page. In fact, it's almost a necessity now. Visitors use reviews for several reasons, and I think it's important to call this out briefly, but the obvious one is that they want to see what other people have had to say about the products. So it's helpful for users to use this content to understand if the product is a good fit for them. For instance, we see this a lot with clothing, where consumers will often see, oh, this says size medium, but they go to the reviews to understand if the product runs larger or smaller compared to traditional sizing. And a lot of people will start commenting that. I bet you'll start noticing a lot more on clothing sites, for instance. The other thing is that reviews are great because if you have a large number of reviews, people feel like they're part of a popular group. They're interested in a product that a lot of other people have bought. So that's great too. Now, that means visitors use reviews to determine how popular a product is. And this means that the more reviews, the better. And if you have a small amount of reviews, that they really need to be impactful. So in this case, only having one review with minimal content like is shown here is that's a pretty big challenge for the visitor. So I would really consider doing some campaigns and post-purchase email follow-ups to receive more product-specific reviews. And if you're interested in something like that, we actually have a great article up on our site. Just go to the search box and on our site, up in the top nav, and search for product reviews, or post-purchase would be a good one too. There's a whole email chain follow-up there, 5 specific emails that should go out after a product is purchased, and some of those emails can influence people coming back and leaving a review. So I would highly recommend taking a look at that. Now, in particular for hope bars here, until that number of reviews grows, I'd recommend taking more generic testimonials and using that content here. That's a great way to stopgap until you can get more reviews for these products. You have down on the bottom right-hand corner testimonials in that nav. It's linked in the footer, so it means that you probably have some testimonials. I would highly recommend bringing those in at this point. So finally, as we move further down, we get to the footer. It's a great piece of information about the products that have been banished to the footer, right? So New Hampshire made and non-GMO certified or verified. These are crucial for people making a decision-making process. They want to know stuff is either local or US made, or and also that it's healthy. Non-GMO is becoming more and more important, especially for that health-conscious crowd. So these great pieces of information are relegated to the footer for some reason, even though you can see they're getting some good engagement. So I really suggest moving these items up into the product descriptions, even if that means for every single product where it's true, they get added to that page. So they're I would say they're not as effective in the footer. You can see they're distracting from the main function of a footer, which is to provide links and access to quick information. So if you look over at the right-hand side where that blue box, second blue box is on the right, you can see that nobody looked at that nav, which is really the whole point of a footer, is to get people where they should go second after they've come this far down. And often people want that utility information. They're going to scroll all the way to the bottom right of your site and look for it. So the fact that nobody saw it here makes me think that those images are just too distracting. I'd recommend removing them and testing them further up the page. Now, lastly, the footer's missing a call to action or a next step that is a product or conversion focused for the visitor. I'd recommend adding in the ability to shop for products in the footer. Even adding, that shop link that's in the top navigation down here as well. Or even better yet, breaking the shop link out into whatever categories you have or more popular products. You want to give people a way to continue shopping. And here, all you've given them is a few utility links about search and news and testimonials and contact. But then, from there, they have to scroll all the way back up if they're still interested in this product too. So certainly would recommend adding in a clear call to action here. Okay, that was great. Lots of good learnings here. Thanks to Hope Bars for allowing everyone to learn from their product detail page. Hopefully I wasn't too harsh there, but I think there's some good learning opportunities. So again, I appreciate you guys submitting that. Next up is Totally. I'm a huge fan of this company. They make ultra slim mobile phone cases. And I've actually got one on my iPhone right now. So I was excited that they submitted their site for a teardown today. Let's dive right in. So like we did before, let's take a second here. What do you notice? Take a moment and let's review that briefly. All right, so let's take a quick look at this heat map. Without me calling anything out right away, what do we see here? Well, first you'll notice that their header promo bar is blue. So it stands out a bit more than the gray one we just reviewed, and thus it gets seen by more visitors. Right? I'm split though on how there are 2 points being made in that bar. The first is that on the left it says 2-year warranty, and then it says plus free shipping on orders over $35. So most visitors are likely to start reading and to see warranty and then stop. They're missing the main point here, which is the free shipping amount. or perhaps warranty is the main point. Either way, I'd really suggest sticking to one key point and driving that home. All call to actions should have one main focus only. So I would suggest trying to test the two call to actions independently and see which one visitors react better to by tracking click-throughs and purchase conversions. Moving down a little bit and looking at the navigation, I'm a huge fan of how clear the labeling is for each navigation item here. It's very clear to a brand new visitor to Totally. So if they're using this again as a landing page where they're directing traffic specifically here, they're doing a great job of helping orient people quickly. If you can't read it, it says iPhone cases, Pixel cases, Galaxy cases, and screen protectors. There's also a couple other items. I do have some concerns about these. Now it says about and FAQ. I'd really suggest testing moving about to that right submenu or utility menu in line with the rest of those utility items like search and cart and contact. Or consider moving it to the footer menu only. That's really where people are going to look for information about the company if they're interested. And FAQ, that's another concern that I have. We often say that FAQs are really just a dumping ground for questions that should be answered elsewhere on the site. So if I could get rid of FAQ pages across the internet, I would. I would just eliminate them. They really only serve to inject more questions into the conversion path and funnel that the visitor didn't even have until they went to that page and they started reading all the random questions that are listed. So I would suggest removing that barrier completely just by removing FAQ from the navigation and moving that page's content elsewhere on the site. Break it up and only put the answers and questions that are relevant to those particular products on the product detail pages. That's where it's going to be really helpful to the consumer as well. So you can see here that the product images are all the same size and they're really neatly displayed. And they clearly show which image is being displayed with a border. So this is in pretty stark contrast to what we just saw on the last site. So you can tell that the eyes are looking at them. So the visitor knows that they have photo options, but they're also in a way that's not too distracting. Which we can tell by the blue color. They're scanning down it quickly and saying, oh yeah, there's other issues, photos here if I'm interested, and then they move on. So, you know, all is really good here. Let's continue moving on. Next, let's look at the main product image where you can see that visitors are really just mostly passing over it. But the main point is being made, that the cases are super thin. How can we tell? Well, let's look at the right side of that image. You can see this is where the phone is showing in a side view, and it's clearly displaying how thin the case is. So lots of visitors are looking in that area. So I give this default product image 2 thumbs up. Now, moving on to the product's description and over to the right side, next to the title, we can see that the price is $25, but it's getting completely missed by visitors. The price is off on its own little island over to the right there, and it's just not stacked in with the rest of the product's details. I'm not sure why Totally chose to make this decision, but I suggest testing moving it over under the title so it's clearly seen. Honestly, and maybe this is why it's off to the right, I'm unsure if that will help sales, as $25 can be on the higher end for an iPhone case price, but I'm wondering how people not seeing the price is affecting cart abandonment. Because I would anticipate that if they're missing the price, that they're adding it to cart, and you can see add to cart's getting a lot of looks down there. It's a big button, so it's going to draw the eye. But then they're adding it to the cart just to see what the price is, when they don't necessarily have to do that. So I bet if we were to be more clear about that pricing, we would probably see you know, cart abandonment go down dramatically. Moving down a little bit, you can see they have great use of social proof with a pretty prominent display. Now, with 672 reviews, that's a number worth displaying for sure. So that's great. And when a product doesn't have 5 full stars, our testing over the years has indicated that the visitor actually trusts the reviews a lot more than if it did have all 5 stars. So this is an important point to make, that visitors always know there's going to be some customers who just refuse to give 5 stars no matter what. There's always that one cranky customer somewhere, or somebody who had an issue with shipping that wasn't the company's fault, but maybe it was the delivery courier's fault, something of that sort. But so as a viewer, when you see all 5-star rankings, it becomes pretty untrustworthy. So the fact that there's 4.5 here at that large number of reviews speaks volumes. The product options a little further down do a great job of clearly showing all the colorways and material options. Here, I really would suggest testing the currently selected indicator to be a bit more noticeable. Right now, maybe this is nitpicking a little bit, but you can see that frosted clear is selected. It's hard to kind of pull that out and make that really understandable as the default. It does align with the imagery, but it's something I would focus a little more on, perhaps. It's also awesome to see the upsell here, meaning that they're suggesting that you add a screen protector to the order for $19, which seems like a good idea. Perhaps if you're worried about protection with your phone, they also offer these. It's worth looking into. This will help to increase that average order value, which is an important metric. When we look to increase conversion rates, we also want to help increase average order value. It's almost important, and it's an often forgotten about tactic in conversion optimization. Yes, you want people to purchase first and foremost, but you can also dramatically influence online revenues by increasing conversions. So the plus free shipping language that's right under, if you can't read that, it's italicized and kind of small, so I'll read it out. It says, add a screen protector for $19. Then right under it, it says, plus get free shipping. So that's a great push, and it indicates that it saves the visitor some money by doing this as well. So they're likely, paying $19 for the screen protector, but they're going to save on shipping, so that helps. Now, that does interject some questions, right? We find that showing the total savings amount right next to the offer will increase conversions. So I would test showing that. Or even having maybe a total price with a before and an after price listed. And what we find works really, really well is to have that before price striked out with the after price next to it. Also, looking at the checkbox off to the right to activate this upsell, well, similar to the price above, it looks like it's getting missed by the visitors. So I'd really suggest doing some testing on moving it to the left of the text and making it more clear how to take advantage of the offer through just perhaps a better user interface and testing a few things out there. I think we could severely increase average order value by bumping that up a little bit. Continuing down the page a little bit here, what this looks like to me is an accordion display of product detail content. So there's little plus icons on the right-hand side there. So it says features, 2-year warranty, shipping, and there's little plus icons next to them. Well, we found over the years that this really is not an effective way to display content. Visitors just don't seem to click to expand the content very often. But usually when the content is read, they convert a lot higher. So instead, I would suggest testing having all the content just expanded and exposed, and removing the collapsible user interface elements. Just get rid of them. As we scroll down a little more, we get to some more great social proof. These reviews are really helpful. If you are into technology and iPhone and Apple stuff, you're going to know these brands most likely. But then we also see that we have 2 distractions appear and animate onto the screen. Well, what we see here is that, and I've just highlighted these, is that typically the tout on the left decreases conversion rates. not increases them. And this is a particular widget that a lot of Shopify stores have been adding recently. It's supposed to be social proof, right? That so-and-so bought this product a few minutes ago, and it just rotates through those. Well, what we find is that it ends up being a distraction, and it doesn't really push people to convert more. So on the right-hand side, we have that email list sign up. And as you can see here, it's bright red, and it's really getting a lot of distraction. And you can see that by the bright red centered over it. Both of these are covering up content that's serving a purpose on the page. So I would think this is likely really frustrating the visitor when they have to close these boxes to see the rest of the content. So, okay, let's just close the boxes and move on with the page unobstructed. But I encourage you to be thinking about what the user would be experiencing and what that user experience would be like as we continue to scroll down the page if those were both left open and obscuring that page content. I don't know about you, but I think that would be really frustrating, right? So as we continue to scroll, we see that there's a clear add to cart call to action that appears in a persistent bar across the top of the site. But I love how this works. It lets the visitor know that there's always an open way to buy when they're looking, and it's only a click away without being forced to scroll to the back all the way up to the top of the page. So, you know, why not make it easy to buy, right? They've done a great job with that here. The challenge is that there are just several color options, and when it clicks, it just automatically adds the clear case, which is the default selection, to the cart. And then the cart slides out from the right and just says it's added a clear case. Well, that could be very frustrating too. What if you didn't want clear? Maybe you were interested in other options. So this technique doesn't work that well when there are a bunch of product options that need to be chosen. Might be better off with, you know, choose your case, something of that sort, and then just scrolling the user back up to the top. Something very much worth testing. Then we have another nice product photo showing how the case looks on the device. And the copy to the right stands out on its own, so it's getting red. You can see some of the red area there. So, you know, I think, you know, keeping with clean design and providing information about the products, I think this is doing its job. As you continue to scroll down, we see once again that the user's engaging with this product description copy, so that's great. And here they're touting all three of the finish options, and they're doing a great job of showing photos of each of these options. I would suggest testing moving this up above the one before it, because you're really showing that there are a bunch of different variants and options here, and that might be more appealing to the visitor. It's worth testing. So I don't know about you guys, but when a company puts a lot of care into their packaging, it has a huge effect on the overall brand feel for me. And what we found over the years is here at The Good is that it does for the visitor to the site too. So touting that you've put a lot of effort into your packaging helps set the expectation that your product is of high quality and that you put a lot of care into what you do. So I really like that they are showing this on the product detail page. They're showing what you're going to receive, and that it's not just going to be a case thrown into a clear plastic bag and coming in a cardboard box. Look, I've ordered cases off Amazon, and that's often what I've gotten. It's one of the reasons that I do like Totally, and now that's why I have their case on my phone. Reassurance is huge in e-commerce, right? So touting a warranty and a return policy very clearly on the product detail page is a must. This is often overlooked on product detail pages, so kudos to Totally for including it and making the policy clear. They even include an email address here where you can reach out, so you know they're not going to go hiding when you need the help later. Now, I would break that paragraph out into 2 sentences, because it says, the second part of that paragraph says, have questions, email us at their email address, and we'll get back to you within 1 business day. I think that's really important there, and something that really helps people know you're going to stand by the product. As we go further down the page, we can see that there again are a ton of customer reviews. there's some pros and cons about how these are displayed though. So let's talk about that a little bit. Let's start with the pros. It's great how you're including the photos with the reviews and clearly showing a bunch of them called out. So you can see on the right side of that blue box there that as opposed to having to go through the entire list to find some user-generated photos, you're calling them out up here. That's great. You can also see the breakdown of the 5-star ratings, which again, usually will instill confidence in the visitor, even though there are some less than 5-star reviews showing. So that's great too. Now, some of the cons though, you can't see that visitors are spending time reading each headline here, which isn't providing a bunch of value. If you look down below the blue box on the left, you see some red dots on those headlines that people are spending some time reading that. But they're not looking at any of the actual review content, the longer sentences that where the nuggets are that may be helpful. Just aren't there. And so I'd want to test changing up the display of these reviews to be a little more compact. I'd also suggest testing highlighting some hand-curated reviews perhaps that are more helpful to shoppers and pulling those curated ones up to the top of the list so that they get seen, as opposed to right now if you see they're sorted by most recent, which isn't going to be super helpful. Okay, we made it to the bottom of the page and the site's footer. Now, the biggest issue here is that we're missing a purchase call to action. If a visitor has gone this far down the page and they've engaged with everything like we see they're doing in this eye tracking heat map, that means that they're most certainly interested in the products, right? So now we need to give them a quick and easy call to action to actually complete that purchase. Now, yes, the add to cart button is in the top right. We've already established that there might need to be some changes to that button, so we'll leave that where it is. But even so, I wouldn't hurt to be testing having a button that scrolled the user back up to the product variant selector at the top of the page and place it just below the footer. Something like pick your case, or something that tells people what's going to happen. Additionally, they really need to bring that shopping navigation into the footer. So we discussed how the main navigation wording was pretty well done. Well, now it just needs to be added to the footer so users can click to continue their purchase journey from right there without having to go all the way back up to the top of the page. Okay, that was a lot of great tips. Thanks for submitting their site. Let's do a quick time check here. All right, we have about 13 minutes. So why don't we dive into one more? We'll look at Furniture Mart here. Now, you guys know the drill by now. Like we did before, let's take a second here. What do you notice? Take a moment and review this briefly on your own. Okay, let's take a quick look at the heat map as well. Again, without me calling anything out right away, what are you noticing on your own here? Well, first of all, we can see the vast amount of attention that is being focused on the header. Before we even get into the product detail page content, there's just so much going on up there, and it's just a lot for the user to process. Now, this is likely in part because there's just way too many call to actions in this main area. There's too many things for the visitor to figure out. Now, again, we call this cognitive load. This is creating a very high cognitive load. Or we're asking the visitor to do a ton of thinking as soon as they get to this page. So how can we help reduce this cognitive load? Well, let's break this down a little further. Putting search up front and center isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially if you have lots of different product categories. So this is true for Furniture Mart. They clearly have tons of different products and product categories by looking at their main navigation right below. It says search for a style and savings. I was a little confused by that language. It should be search for a style or product, something of that sort. I'm not really sure what you're prompting people to do to search for savings. I haven't seen that one before, honestly, and it was a little confusing. It made me think about it twice. As we move to the right, there's this combination of offers and a typical utility navigation. So look, this is no doubt going to be confusing for visitors, perhaps even really overwhelming. I'd suggest calming this down by testing clearing some of the items out. It's nice to be able to promote that you do free store pickup and in-home delivery. And beyond that, inspiration, weekly ad, find a store, my account. Well, it's a mix of things. It's a mix of utilities and promotions that just is going to be a little bit much for people to wade through. So the navigation has quite a few categories listed in it, and this can be kind of a problem. We usually recommend no more than 6 items in a main navigation. And here it's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? At least. So what's more worrisome to me is, other than the number, is really the confusion between sale and clearance. Again, those two words, they mean generally the same thing. Something's on clearance, it means it's on sale, and it can be used interchangeably in English language at times. But why do we need both items? Can they be combined? What I'm really recommending here is a simplification of the navigation wherever possible. Another good example here is mattresses. Can't mattresses go under bedroom? I mean, that's generally where a mattress lives, right? I understand you would want to promote that you sell mattresses, but at the same time, most people are going to know that's where they would go. So it's something to think about. Next, we have the eye being drawn down to the promo banner. We're drawing attention away from the rest of the page and acting as a blocker for the eye looking to travel down the page. I'd recommend testing moving this to the very top of the page, as we've seen on the last 2 sites we reviewed. Now, that's become user convention. People know that, hey, whatever your major promotion is, it's going to go up to that bar at the top of the page now. And I think because of the color here, and also just how much information is being packed into this header, it's really kind of an issue. As we move down, there are a couple things worth pointing out on this page. The first is the tab display for item and details. As we can see, no one looked even at details. And this is in effect the same as what we saw with the accordion display from the last site. People generally won't click on items like this to expand them. So I would highly recommend having that content all expanded out instead of having that detail button there. Now, here's a great example of how to show pricing in an enticing manner. As I mentioned earlier, showing the original price striked out next to the price you're selling the item for really shows the visitor that they're indeed saving money by buying from you. It's just it's a great way to entice visitors to purchase and know they're getting a decent deal here. So we've proven over the years that this display influences conversions. So well done here. This short product description that I've highlighted really isn't adding much value. It's not telling the user anything that they don't already know. I'll read it to you real quick in case you can't see it, but it says, bring home this Kona mango counter table to add a fresh new look to your space. I'm not really sure what that's telling the user that is going to help them to understand if this product is a good fit for them. But the only thing of value in there is that they include the product name. So I'd suggest just testing removing this or altering those descriptions to provide some real value up front really quickly. What's the main reason somebody would want this product as opposed to something else? Now, I'll be honest, I don't know much about the different variations of wood and what that means, but if we look at the larger product description below, it says, this table features construction with solid mango wood. So it's beautiful enough to become a showpiece, yet tough enough to take a beating from heavy daily use. Now, that is so much more helpful, and something, just taking that one sentence and moving that into that top header really helps it stand out from others. If we scroll down a little bit, we can see that there's a great job at offering options for getting the product. I'd really suggest adding some copy here about how they can choose these options after adding to the cart. Because right now, it tells you what they are, but it doesn't really tell you how to take advantage of these. Also, it doesn't really give the user an idea of the cost for in-home delivery, or assuming it's not free, because it doesn't say, it says no hassle, but it doesn't say at no cost to you. So I have a feeling, again, like we saw before, there's probably some cart abandonment happening where people will add this to the cart, see shipping fee being added or delivery fee being added, and then they drop off because they weren't expecting that. I would suggest at this stage of the process to give them some idea, even if it's a starting at price or something of that sort. This find stores where this is displayed is what's highlighted here. If you can't read that, again, it's find stores where this is displayed. Now, I haven't seen much of this before, and it's a great feature. It's awesome for larger products like this. I'd suggest really testing making this more prominent, especially if you know that the vast majority of your visitors are local to a retail store near you, right? So be thinking about this and how you're going to engage with those people. And I would suggest bringing this up a little bit more. And it's interesting that this is not near add to cart or in that block on the top right. It's kind of in no man's land over here. And you can see it doesn't even get seen. Nobody's really looked at it or saw it. So I would suggest making that more prominent. As we get further down the page, you'll see that that did happen a little bit, but I have some commentary on that as well. So if we move down the page a little bit, we get to the product description. Again, here we have that wall of text effect that I mentioned in prior today. You can see the same pattern here, right? With the visitors reading on the left side, but not on the right. They're trying to scan this text quickly and not digesting it, and they're missing a ton of great information that's just buried in this big paragraph. So this content needs to be broken out into more readable bullet points, or even shorter sentences instead of just one long paragraph. Here you can see guests also viewed. Now, this is a great way to keep visitors moving themselves down the research and purchase funnel. If they weren't really interested in this product that much, maybe there's something else here that they might like better. And you're giving them some good options of different sizes, different woods, things of that sort. But I do find that the heart icons that are on every image are a bit distracting. It's unclear what they mean. What are they used for? Does this mean that they're someone's favorite or prior guests' favorites, or something that you can add to your favorite list, which hasn't been mentioned at all on this page prior? So that functionality is a little distracting, and I bet if we looked, probably not used very often at all. So it'd be something that to think about there. Additionally, I would really suggest testing the call to action. Currently it says add to cart. That represents a huge commitment. You're asking someone to add this to the cart without having looked at any further details, and just one small image of something that's a little bit higher price point and something that's going to be in their home on display as well, most likely. So I would really recommend doing something that represents less of a commitment. Perhaps some tests I would suggest running like see details or learn more. Really the goal here would be to help increase that click-through rate. As we move further down the page, we see that displayed at feature factor in. I test moving this up closer to the product we're looking at. All right, it feels out of context having this down below with the other recommended products. But again, it's nice that this exists. Lastly, the footer is just as jam-packed as the header. A few things I test in this footer. The newsletter sign up. Perhaps try to adjust the amount of copy below join our newsletter. It could really be shortened to one sentence without losing any value from what's there. I'd also suggest stacking the form elements vertically instead of the current horizontal display, so it's all together. This will help make the footer seem less congested as well, just visually. I'm also unclear why there are two different navigation areas in this footer. I'd like to see some testing done on combining them into the same area or combining a bunch of the items even, as we were talking about doing with the main head navigation. For instance, privacy policy, terms and conditions, terms of use, aren't those all pretty much the same thing? They're usually all on one page. I think they can be even combined under terms and conditions. Lastly, you've got the phone number, free store pickup, and in-home delivery, and all of those are clickable, but they don't have any consistency with the rest of the footer or site buttons. So I'd suggest just making this clickable text links to help clean that display up even further. Perhaps, making this more of a vertical stacked along with the bottom bar doing vertically stacked as well. And if you see in that bottom bar, you also see FAQs again, one of my pet peeves, so I wanted to call that out. I won't go over that again. Okay, 11 o'clock. We made it through 3, and that's all we have time for today. Are there any questions? I haven't seen any be submitted just yet. Were there any questions from the audience that you'd like to ask before we wrap up? I know it's 11 o'clock and probably need to get going, but if there are any questions, I'll wait for 30 seconds and see. All right, a couple questions coming in, awesome. Peter asks, what heat map tool were you using? So Peter, we have a tool set that we utilize here that does eye tracking. It's something that we've done. It's a proprietary tool set that we have in-house for eye tracking. There are some great heat mapping tools out there if you're looking to do heat mapping not based on eye tracking, but based on tool sets like mouse tracking or movement tracking. I would highly suggest checking out Hotjar, H-O-T-J-A-R. Hotjar is a great tool. It's about $9 a month, I believe, and allows you to do a ton of different tracking there. So it's a great tool set. Look at that. Also, a lot of the A/B testing tool sets now have this built in. I know that VWO, or Visual Website Optimizer, has some heat mapping as well. It is lumped in with a bunch of other stuff, so it is going to be a little more expensive, but Hotjar would be my initial recommendation for that. Philip asks, does a sticky call to action, price and add to cart make sense? In general, Philip, I think it does. We need to wrap up here, so keep moving on. This is just the tip of the iceberg today. Really, teardowns are just a really quick tip of the iceberg, looking at one piece of data. If we look at full conversion rate, really you're looking at all of. I think that is the key takeaway today when it comes to CRO is that we only had time to really look at some of the challenges on these pages we reviewed and only one of the pages of each of these sites. So if I can make any point and leave you with the points that conversion optimization goes way, way deeper. And we want to collect all the types of data that we discussed, and as well as run testing on all the areas that we suggested today. So with that final thought, let's discuss quickly some next steps you can take from here. First of all, I'd like to recommend signing up for our weekly Insight emails if you don't already receive them. We are writing some great new content focused on improving e-commerce conversions very regularly. So secondly, you can actually, before I move on, you can go to thegood.com/sign-up. Or scroll all the way to our bottom right of our footer, and there's a button there to sign up. Secondly, if after today's webinar you'd like to explore more about conversion optimization for your company, feel free to get in touch. My email address is up here on the screen, and we can determine if there's a good mutual fit to do so together. And lastly, as a really quick reminder, the recording should be available as a replay within a few minutes after it ends today. So if you have any other questions, feel free to contact me at john@thegood.com. And thank you for sticking around for 5 extra minutes today. I'm sorry we didn't have more time for Q&A, but feel free to email me your questions. I'd be happy to get back to you. Thanks again for attending today. I appreciate you doing so, and we'll see you again next time. Have a wonderful afternoon.